What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I'm finally ready to give my full review for Gotham Knights. 4 years after I started talking about this game on the channel, back then it was, the rumored Arkham kind of spin-off things, and over 225 videos, here we are. We finally have the game. I finally beaten the game, and I have pretty conflicting thoughts. I think one of the main ways I want to talk about this game, I'm going to break it down into kind of elements, but to give an overview of how I feel about it, I think this is a solid game. I think there is fun to be had here. I think there are moments of really good fun. I think there's also moments of very high quality in this game. And then I think for every one of those moments, I can probably find a negative, one on the other side of things. So I do think this is a very, very rough around the edges game. If you remember leading into this game, I talked about how I do think this game is a 6, 7, 8 kind of game out of 10, and that I think that there are going to be things in this game that surprise people in terms of quality, but I do think there's going to be enough issues with the game that kind of holds it back. That's actually, I'm kind of Nostradamus. That's exactly what happened, I feel, in this game. There are, again, moments of great joy and great fun, and then there's so much rough around the edges things that it really brings down this game, or stops it at the very least, stops it from being something very, very special. So let's talk about the story / the writing first. Now, this is not going to contain any spoilers. I'm actually going to do a completely separate spoiler-filled discussion video, probably tomorrow or the next day, where we'll talk about, what happens in this game in more detail. But I will say, the story, I feel like it left a lot on the table. I think the Knights are easily the best part of the game, but sometimes, including the ending, and I won't spoil the ending, but including the ending, they actually forget that this is a game that's more co-op oriented, that involves all of the Knights. Towards the very end, the last hour and a half, 2 hours of the story, it really only focuses on the ones that you're playing. Now, obviously, the ones that you're playing are the ones you hear the dialogue, and it's the ones you're with the entire game, but it always kind of comes back to the group. And I feel like at the end, they just completely forgot to do that. They literally left people in individual spaces, specifically who you're playing as. They didn't really bring the Knights back together, but overall, the Knights are really good. I do like their personalities. I like their kind of back and forth with each other. The best parts of the game, I do think, are their individual storylines that you can go around and interact with, and then also just them, before, or I guess in a cutscene before a main mission or after a mission, their kind of banter with each other and figuring it out. I think they're really, really solid. Again, as I talked about in my Knights ranking video, I do like some more than others. Red Hood, I just don't think is utilized the right way, at all. They leave, again, a lot on the table. Specifically, I find, for him, I personally like Batgirl a lot. I know she, to some, I've seen people point out the kind of corniness or kind of the over-exaggeratedness of her voice actress. I actually kind of like it. I actually think it kind of fits this game overall. But I do enjoy all the Knights. Even Red Hood, who I think they left stuff on the table, I do overall like it. But now, in terms of the story itself, without spoiling it, I just really think it falls flat in quite a few different places. The Court of Owls they're a good introduction to them, leading into them, figuring all the stuff out, very good. But by, let's say, 60, 70% of the game on, man, they really, in my opinion, dropped the ball on the Court of Owls just in general. Really badly. And I guess when I say drop the ball, one of the main elements, and I don't even know too much about, the comics, we've talked about that before, right? I kind of go in blind for some of these things, but I do know the Court of Owls in general. You don't really get the sense that they're this yes, it's kind of sprinkled in, but do I get the sense that they're this all-powerful organization that lives in the shadows, that pulls all the strings, that you should really be fearing, right? No, I really don't think they showed how, I guess, organized and how well that this group is at I guess, what they do at their job. I really think they kind of dropped the ball there. So the story itself really leaves a lot to be desired, specifically with the court. There are some major story decisions like the ending that I'm kind of baffled at, just overall. It's actually kind of shocking that they did what they did. So The story, I would say, is just a middling thing. It's not the most impressive aspect of this game. But let's go into one of the main strengths of this game. And I know I mentioned the Knights. The Knights are a strength, but specifically, even besides, I guess, some of their personalities, is the gameplay of each individual Knight. Now, I have some pretty big problems with the gameplay and how it's organized in this game. But before we get into that, talking about, again, each Knight, it is probably the game's biggest strength. I really think, and this goes from playing it by yourself to playing it with another person, right? I think the idea that I can come out here and say, Batgirl is my favorite character to play as, and Nightwing's awesome, and, Red Hood I just really don't jive with when it comes to gameplay. It's cool when I can say that, and then somebody else can say, what are you talking about? Red Hood's incredible. Like, I love him. I play as Red Hood all the time. That's the strength of the game. I mean, that literally alone right there, as long as you keep things, respectful and stuff, you know what I mean? But that really is a strength of this game, that one person can say, here's my top two. And then the other person says, well, those top two are actually my bottom two. I rarely use them. That's a good thing. In my opinion, that's a good thing, because that really shows a difference in how the Knights act, and I guess in gameplay, mainly in gameplay, right? I don't really see many people discussing their personalities, but in how they move around the world, and how they fight, which one's overpowered, which one, needs to do this or that. That's really good. So I think, besides the repetitiveness of the enemies and the crimes that we're going to talk about in a second, I do think how you move around in the world and fight with these Knights is actually a really big strength. And another big strength is the multiplayer. Now, I will be flat out honest. I saw a lot of comments that said, playing this game alone felt very, empty, and it didn't feel right. Playing it with a second person, really enhanced the game. In the time I did it, I didn't really feel that. Now, I had a lot of fun, and I played with my community, with you guys. I had a lot of fun. I'm not, dissing the people I played with. I just don't know if it super enhanced the, my playthrough. I can see it, but I didn't, this is my review. I didn't really feel it all that much when I was playing. But playing with a friend is a lot of fun. It certainly makes things easier, which we're going to talk about. Let's talk about it right now. So, I talked about the crimes, I talked about the repetitiveness of the enemies, and I want to get more into that, because I talked about that, in the impressions. This game, I really think it actually kind of holds up for roughly 70 to 80% of the game. And I'm talking about, the gameplay. Is it repetitive? Yes, the enemies are incredibly repetitive. The crimes, obviously, are the same things over and over. And considering that's the core game, and basically every single quest revolves around doing that, there are some that are like the detective stuff, the puzzles. Those are a lot of fun. I actually really like those. But that can really hurt your game. And let me give you some examples. So, when you're going around this world, one thing I did rather early is I just did everything. So if there was a premeditated crime, I did it. Every single time I did the crime. If there were people being attacked on the streets, just the random events that are happening, I did it. What you find out, though, is as the game goes on, there are people in select areas that will give you quests for literally doing that. And when you do it, you'll get XP through them. So if you waste your time, and like I do feel I did, early on in the game just doing these things, before you meet the people, you're actually, in my opinion, wasting your time, because those people, they ask for the same thing that you're already doing, but they'll give you things. All right, so that's one example. Then you'll even have main missions start to get involved. So it's, in my opinion, not great when, again, you can just go around and then there's just NPCs that are giving you quests for what you're already doing. But then you have the main missions that oftentimes, this happens 4 or 5 times in the game, you will have to do, again, generic things you're already doing for the main quest. And if you don't do it, the main quest doesn't advance. So interrogate a regulator. You could do that 500 times in the game. You could do that and earn XP through various, people in the world. But there will come a time in the main mission where you will literally have to interrogate a regulator to advance the mission. And that's a mission. That's a literal quest. I think that's very lazy, in my opinion. I think that's really, really bad. The main example, and I don't know if I want to say what the boss is, so I'll leave it kind of spoiler free. But at the end of the game, I'm talking the second to last quest, you face a mini boss / a boss, and then you have to go around the world and face 3 more of them. And then in the final mission, you have to face another one. So within 2 story missions, and one of which involves you just going around Gotham to do it. You have to face the same boss with the same attack patterns and everything 5 times. 5 times in 2 missions back to back. Again, what I said, the game holds up like 80% of the way. Here's the thing. Is it repetitive? Yes. I actually was still having fun with it, though. I don't really care. I didn't really care if it was repetitive. It felt fun. It felt fluid. I was changing my play style, as Batgirl or any of these. And as you get more powerful, your abilities, you unlock more abilities. And, there's a huge contrast of your characters at the best of their strength and when you first start out the game. So I will say the game's gameplay is strengthened by you, the player. Like, the enemies don't really help. The enemies are just the same repetitive enemies. It's really you unlocking new abilities and new skills and using them in the fight to make things engaging. And I do think, even though it's repetitive, it works. It actually works throughout the entire game until it really starts to get repetitive at the end. That boss thing really ticked me off. I do still want to talk about, let's continue the bosses. So you have like the Harley, Clayface, and Mr. Freeze thing. Here's the thing. For whatever reason, the game also decided that for most of the game, it doesn't feel like you need a second person. So I'm going to disagree, again, with some of the people that I saw that it vastly enhances it. Maybe that's true. Again, I didn't feel it. But one thing I noticed is that I really felt you could play this entire game by yourself. Okay, I'm an introvert. I don't really, I don't go outside almost at all. And I like to keep to myself. And I played this game for the majority of it by myself. And I can tell you, as somebody who did that, the game actually supports you doing it for most of it. For most of it, the game really feels like, yeah, I can play this through by myself, and it still feels fluid. I can still take out enemies at a decent rate. And by the way, I was always overpowered. So for anybody who's about to say anything about my playstyle, I was always much higher level than the quest demanded. So when I was facing Harley, I was like 3, 4, 5 levels ahead of her. Clayface, Mr. Freeze, I was like Two-Face as well. Like all of these, okay? I was much more powerful. So the boss fights are when the game decides you should play with a second person. And see, that doesn't really work for me at all, because when the entire game makes it seem like you can play it by yourself, no problem, but then you face any of those 3 side villains, or the final boss in the game, or that boss that I said you have to fight 5 times in the span of like an hour or 2. All of those, every single one, are some of the worst fights I've ever seen in my life. The worst. Okay, Two-Face, Harley, not in mechanics, okay? They're a little repetitive in terms of what the enemies do, but they actually are pretty cool. I like the attacks that they have. They're all vastly different. They clearly have the most, like, energy being put into them. Like, the Mr. Freeze missions are awesome. They're over the top. They're very big, and they're very cool, and I respect that quite a bit. So there's the positives, right? They really did do a good job. The main missions have a high quality to them, you can tell, versus other things in this game. But when you're facing these enemies, their health bars are gigantic. They are very repetitive, and these boss fights can take long. I keep going back to like the 5 mini bosses in the span of 2 missions. Each one took me roughly 7 to 10 minutes each to beat. So that's bad. I don't want to sit there and face a mini boss for 7 to 10 minutes. Now, if I had a second person, would it not have been that? Yes, correct. Like it would have been shorter. But my issue is why? Why is it so vastly different? Why are the bosses seemingly pushing 2-player when the entire game kind of makes it known you don't need 2 players? So that really, and that, I don't know, like that's design. I guess that's design. I don't want to call it level design. Yet again, when it's repetitive and it's taking place over multiple, areas, it is, I guess, level design. But the design in general, to just swap it like that, is disturbing. So that's a gigantic, in my opinion, negative of this game. The writing of the game is kind of all over the place as well. I know I mentioned Batgirl with the corniness aspect of it. I actually kind of embraced it and liked it. The writing is all over the place. There are moments where like they're going for emotion, and they do actually hit it. Like I do think the writing is well done in some places. Some characters I think are written better than others, but they'll just be some very, again, like silly, very silly dialogue. And I'll give you an example. The line in Star Wars, the one that literally everybody memes on because it's so bad, of "they fly now," right? They fly now, they fly now. That is an awful line. And that's I mean, in my opinion, the reason that's memed is because it's so stupid. for this game, they literally do the exact same thing. I think they say it's Mr. Freeze, and they say like he controls the weather now, and then Robin says he controls the weather now. They literally do it word for word. And I know like repeating the same phrase back isn't like exclusive to Star Wars, but you can tell that's exactly what it was from. And it didn't work in Star Wars, and guess what? It doesn't work here either. So those kind of moments, though, plague the game. Like, they're everywhere. There are moments, again, like for every good dialogue, every good character, there's like a, why did you write, the dialogue like that? It didn't like tick me off super bad. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say the writing is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, but there were some very questionable, writing decisions, let's say, in the game overall. The visuals is definitely a game strength, I would say, as well. The game looks beautiful. The cutscenes, with the Knights, they probably look the least good of the game, but I still think they look good. For those that were saying like it looked like a mobile game going in, it definitely doesn't. It definitely doesn't. The cutscenes I do think look pretty darn good. The lighting, and that's just the cinematics and stuff like that. When you're in the world, I mean, the game looks awesome. Gotham, this is the best looking Gotham I think we've ever gotten. I know there's the side-by-side pictures of like Arkham Knight with this, but I really like when you get out of the Belfry and you're just standing there and you see the lights and the kind of like the smoke in the city, like it looks insane. It really, really looks good. The lighting's well done and all that. So I'm impressed actually by the visuals. I don't think that's an issue at all, and I would chalk that up again as a strength of the game. One final element I want to talk about, though, is the length / the, is this game, like, fully complete? Is this a fully complete game? I made a video yesterday talking about the game being built for DLC, and this is it's a tightrope, because when you have a game that I think so easily has DLC built into its core, and I do think this game is one of those, you are on a fine line of, well, the game that's out right now that I paid $70, that's a lot of money, especially now, that it better be complete. It better feel like a full experience that doesn't need DLC to make the game complete. And I would say overall, I do feel this game stands on its own. Now, it's tough because I do think this game would benefit from having 1 to 2 more side villains in the same way they did Mr. Freeze, Harley, etc. If you did 1 to 2 more, you would add 2-3 hours. You'd have another faction, right? Because a main villain or a side villain would have a faction that goes with them. I think that would enhance the game. Now, the question is, if I think that makes the game better, does that mean that the game like needed it in the Like that's and I really, to me, I would say probably no. I think I would lean on, it took me about 30 hours. I'm level 30. I mean, you have to do the new game plus to get to level 40 and kind of finish it that way. I did a lot. I mean, I didn't find everything in the game, but I mean, I really felt I maxed out the game. I did plenty of crimes. I played as all the characters. I got them pretty powerful. Like, I feel good about what I did. And I put in about 30 hours. So, and then if you have to do New Game Plus and all that. So, I mean, is this a 40, 50-hour experience? Can people do it more if they play it more? Yes. Again, though, the issue is it does start to get more, in my opinion, it gets more and more repetitive. And as the game goes on, it kind of ticks me off more and more when they do the mini boss thing and stuff like that. So I will say by the end of the game, I wasn't really doing many crimes anymore, whereas I did in the first like 20 or so hours. The last half, or the last, let's say, third of when I played the game was more focused on just doing kind of missions, because I kind of felt I did everything there was to do in terms of the crimes. So it's tough. Actually, would having more make it worse, because then you're still repeating the same thing. It's a new faction, but they're still the same enemy types, but it's a new boss. You'd have a new, boss fight and a new villain, and that would be cool, right? So, I mean, give or take. I really, for me, I think the game is complete. I do think DLC would help this game out. I think the game is built for it, and I'd be shocked if, especially if the game does well, like sells well, I'd be shocked if they don't do at least 1 or 2 kind of villain DLCs, but I don't think it stops the game from being complete by those not being there. So I think I covered everything. I mean, look, if you didn't notice by now, I don't, and I've said this like 1,000 times, but in case you guys are new, I don't give scores. I don't give scores on this channel. I don't like review scores whatsoever. I like talking about the game, positives, negatives, and let you guys decide where to stand. This is a $70 game. It's a full price game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to buy it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you not to buy it. It's your money. You make that decision. Now, is it better than a Plague Tale Requiem? No. Is it better than some of the better games that came out this year? No. I can tell you, and if you want me to tell you in the comments or something, if you have like a question like that, I can tell you like, hey, if you're debating between two games, this game and another game, which one should I get? I can probably do that. But ultimately, I do think this game has fun in it. I think it's a very rough around the edges game. If I were to give a score, this would be a 6 or 7 out of 10 kind of game. For every strength, and there are strengths, there are weaknesses. There's also a bias in me, and if you guys didn't notice that either, I said it in the beginning. I mean, I covered this game for 4 years. I made 200 plus videos. A lot of my subscribers are from this game. I owe a lot to this game for my channel. Those are all true statements. So I may actually be giving it more of the benefit of the doubt, or I actually may be kind of praising it more than it deserves. But I will say, like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, this is the most amazing, awesome game. I see a lot of people on Twitter saying just how, like, incredible this game is. That's fine. That's total. You can think whatever you want. I don't agree at all. I think there's so many weaknesses in this game. I'm also not going to sit here and tell you this is the worst thing I've ever played in my life and this game is complete trash, like I've also seen people say. Again, they can say whatever they want. I just don't agree with that either. I think this is a game kind of right down the middle. Is a right down the middle game $70? That's up to you. I would say I put enough time into it, and I spent a lot of time in it and making these videos and all that stuff, for the channel. I think it was worth the $70 for me, but I'm in a quite different situation than I think most people are, right? So there you go. 4 years in the making. There's my review of Gotham Knights. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on so you know when all these videos go up. If you want to follow or support me anywhere else, I have all my social media links in the description. My Twitter, my second channel, we have Patreon and YouTube memberships if you guys want to support us there. Again, the links are in the description, and the join button is obviously next to the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.